Right. Forgive me if I stumble over anything, PJ. It's my first time doing it like this. It's quite fun. Okay, so welcome to this D&AD chat. I'm Jamie Madge. I'm co-editor of Shots, and I'm here to chat with PJ Pereira. PJ, I hope you don't mind. I've written a little intro for you here. You've got to interrupt me if I get anything wrong, or if it's too if it's too lovely and you get a bit embarrassed. But so I've even put it on a clipboard. How exciting is that? So PJ Pereira is creative chairman and co-founder of Pereira and Odell, and he's an advertising and entertainment pioneer, an Emmy winner, a best-selling writer, and a serial collector of Cannes Lion Grand Prix. Pereira has become one of the world's most influential and respected creatives. His work has premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, the Werner Herzog documentary Lo and Behold, for NetScout, and his agency was also the first to win an Emmy for branded series competing against regular programming with Intel's The Beauty Inside. He also edited The Art of Branded Entertainment, the first book ever published by a Cannes jury. So it's safe to say you know a little bit about the subject of branded entertainment, and that's what we're here to talk about today. With branded entertainment, personally, I just think it's such a broad category. It seems to encompass pretty much everything. So I'm going to start with a nice, simple question, which is, what makes for a brilliant piece of branded entertainment?
The only other question that is more complicated, that maybe on that level of complication, is how do you define branded entertainment? And I think this is the issue. Being a new category in a fast-moving world like ours, at a stage where the world is changing faster than ever, it's very tempting to try to jump very quickly to try to define it, how to establish the rules, and I think that can lead to the wrong approach. And that was one of the conversations that I had with the jury in the early stages, is that, yeah, I think we all know what we individually think that great brand entertainment is. I think we all tend to know our own definition of brand entertainment. But how about this? How about we leave it all outside the room as we judge? And when we finish, we try. Then when we're at the end, when we're finally selecting the yellows, we go back to the discussion, because that gives us the opportunity to, instead of trying to teach the world what we think that great brand entertainment is and what brand entertainment is, we can learn on behalf of the industry. And I think that's in well-established categories, the jury can go there to dictate the future. In new categories like brand entertainment, I think we're there. Our role there is more to learn on behalf of everyone, to be exposed to a massive amount of work and let our guts tell what's great, what's not, and then interpret that and say, oh, that's why. And I can tell that there are things like, at some point there's someone discussing that, it's like if there's a format that is an ad, that it looks like an ad, there kind of the logo in the end with signature in the end, that then it's not brand entertainment. It's like, yeah, there's some things. And then all of a sudden we see stuff popping up and we're like, we love it. And it got a graphite and went all the way there for like, okay, but then when we had to pick the yellows of that, it kind of started to push it back down. No, it has that logo at the end. It has the structure of an ad. It quacks like an ad. Maybe it's an ad. So why should we care about this that much? So there were all sorts of discussions around that. But if you look at one of the yellows that we gave is for the IKEA work. That is an ad. It's clearly an ad. But it also drinks from entertainment, not brand entertainment. It drinks from entertainment, especially from music, a lot. And if I like, you know what? In the end, when you're watching thousands of things, that feels like a piece of entertainment. That piece of something that I would pay to watch. I would download it. I would go on demand to do it, to make it a good use of my time. And I think that then it deserves to win. And it got a yellow. So I think if I had a gun on my head and had to say, how do you define this? For me, brand entertainment are the ideas that at the same time are great use of a client's money and the consumer's time. As vague as I would be willing to go without kind of putting ourselves in a box that we're going to regret later.
So it can live, a beast brand entertainment can live inside an ad break, as that IKEA work did, but it's just about that investment of the audience's time, and if they're going to seek it out, I guess, afterwards.
Yeah, I think that if you think of for me, if you think of these on-demand media world, I think that's how we need to look at that. It's like, yeah, is it worth watching on demand for consumers as much as it is producing and pushing for the brand? And kind of, okay, if everyone's okay with that, then it's a piece of brand entertainment that people are just going there the same way they go to the theater and pay to watch a 2-minute movie, a 2-hour movie. Will they watch this 2-minute thing or these 6-second things? I think the number of seconds for a while there was like, yeah, it needs to be like longer form. I think that the number of seconds, it's only important if once you put in the context of were those seconds worth it. Right? If it's 2 hours of worthy content, it's brand entertainment. If it's 6 seconds worthy of content, then it's brand entertainment. And that's somehow like that. For me, I feel more comfortable with that kind of discussion. And all right, I think I buy that. You know? I think it's the fun part of this is the ability to explore and look at things without clear definitions, because then the creativity really shines. We don't have to hold on or to respect any formulas. There's no respect to anything whatsoever other than there's a consumer on one side, there's a brand paying the bill on the other side. As long as they're both respected, we just need to see if we like it.
For you, which pieces of work in particular stood out? What really spoke to you personally?
I really like the Operation Lockdown. I really like the IKEA one. I think IKEA is my favorite. And I love the Apple Bounce too. But Apple Bounce was a kind of those three are they're square on that discussion of is it one thing or another. Like Bounce is that thing that are saying that, is it an ad or is a piece of brand entertainment? Is it a music video or hey, who gives a fuck? We are the only ones who really care about this. I think there's a good case to say that advertising, as things are evolving, advertising is one little element of what brand entertainment is. Some people say, no, there's an overlap, but it's not exactly the same. I don't care. And I don't think we should care that much because it's way too early for this. I think what we should care is that brands are running out of space to speak. And what this category actually does is solving for that question. In a radical world where brands can no longer buy consumers' time, how would we do it? We may never get 100% there, but we are going fast on that direction. And somewhere along the way, we may pause and take a deep breath for, okay, now we still have some areas, we still have some opportunities here to buy people's time, but what if we go all the way? And I think thinking conceptually in the radical world where there won't be more time anymore. What happens if the Super Bowl is bought by Netflix, the entire NFL season? What happens? What if the NBA, the right for the NBA is bought by Hulu and they decide to run the entire thing with no ads? Or Amazon? Those things, it's not that we're talking about tiny little companies that have no money to compete. They're freaking barbarians that don't give a fuck about the advertising ecosystem. They only care about the experience for consumers. And let me give you this. I think this is, for me, the most frightening parts of this, but also where the big opportunity is. Imagine that you went back in time, like 40 years. And you were the CMO of Coca-Cola, right? And you had just hired my agency to work for you. And I have a great idea for you. So I have never seen an ad before. You have no context of what an ad is. It's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a thing called ads that we're going to get when people are watching movies, right in the big scenes where they can't wait to see that, we're going to pause the movie. And I'm going to have someone singing, drink Coca-Cola, and then go back. You're going to look at me and say, why would I get people angry at my brand like this?
Yeah.
Right? The reality is that we have done that because we were born with it, and we don't know a world where that doesn't exist. We got so used to the idea that entertainment is like that we forget about it. But guess what? My son, he grew up watching movies on demand all the time. The first time he saw an ad on YouTube, he woke me up, and I was living in San Francisco, so it shook me. I thought it was an earthquake. It was like, shook me up. Dad, what's up? What's happening? You have to get out of these advertising things. So why? Because it sucks. Because he was being interrupted by an ad for the first time. I think that the point is not that advertising is good or bad. The idea of being interrupted, of having your entertainment interrupted, is a bad idea. So we need to find a way to be present without interrupting, because that's bad user experience.
Do you find that within branded pieces of brand entertainment in themselves, they can sometimes, in a way, interrupt themselves with having maybe the brand a little bit too prevalent, or maybe they've sort of misunderstood the level of entertainment to the how much the brand needs to be seen, or like that classic sort of product placement kind of thing? Yeah, is that something that is brought into the judging? Are you looking for that?
That is one of the most difficult and delicate balances in how much we've seen brands that made too much a point about a product, brands that didn't make it enough, right? And we put them both down. It's like we're looking for that perfect balance, and in a certain way, the golden standard of brand entertainment is when the brand is clearly there, unapologetically, and the consumer doesn't mind. Consumers don't mind, right? So if it's there, you know what it is. And I think it's what you talked about Beauty Inside before. It's like Beauty Inside was a case of that. It was clearly from Intel saying that it's what's inside that counts. And people write to us and say, yeah, I know that this is an hour and a half long ad, but I don't care. That's great. That's the perfect email to get for a brand entertainment project. I know it's a long ad, but I don't care. That means that you have done a great job. I think that Bounce for Apple does that work because, the guy puts the headphones and he goes there, and headphones makes the whole thing happen. And you don't mind that it's there. You get that on IKEA. It's like it's a great song, and the whole thing is the product is part of the story, part of it's like a character in the story. Right? And I think that is a good sign. It's like another one of the yellows. It's something that we did at the agency, so it's kind of a little odd to speak about that. But I know the story behind it. It's like the movie poster movie. That is a movie done backwards. We took Adobe that has kind of the graphic tools that the world uses. And all right, let's talk to students and say, you make a poster and we're going to make a movie. It's like movie making backwards. And they're like, the brand is clearly there, but it's removed to the point it stops right before the movie starts, right? And then it's okay. Everyone knows it's recognizable. The attribution is clearly there on the premise. And then you can go and tell the story, whatever the story you want. There are different layers and different mechanics. And what the movie poster movie did, it stops the brand stops right before the content starts. So you know that it's from Adobe, you understand about, but you're not interrupted by that. On Bounce, it's the opposite. Right? When you look at the Apple Museum experience, it's very different as well. It's like on the premise, knowing that experience exists, and the whole thing was shot with a single battery, that makes you understand everything that you want to say about the product, and that's all. You don't even need to watch. There was a big discussion on the jury on that one. It felt like, but it's boring. It's like, no one's going to watch 5 hours of content. It's like, but no one needs to watch 5 hours of content. No one spends 5 hours necessarily at a museum. You go there, you see the 2 or 3 things you want to watch, you spend maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour, and then you leave. And you know that you can go back there and do it. What Apple did is that they said that you can spend 5 hours, and you know that you can spend 5 hours, you can brush through, watch the 5 things that you want to see, and then you leave. The product impression is done.
Yeah.
For the consumer is a worthy experience, whatever is the time that they decided to spend. For the audience, for the brand is worthy investment, because now people know that there were 5 hours worth of content.
Yeah, and I guess in that one, Apple seemed particularly good at this, where that's almost a tech demo as well. It's sort of saying, look at the fidelity of our camera, look at how long the battery lasts. Like, look at, this is a cinematic
demo with unapologetic.
Yeah.
And that's why I like about it. It's like you cannot do great brand entertainment if you start by saying you're sorry for being there. You know, and when you see it, it's like you're not sorry, and it's still great content. That's when you have a great example.
Did you see any particular trends as you were watching through the stuff? Is there anything in particular that marked out this year as opposed to previous years in brand entertainment?
Honestly, I wasn't looking for trends, because I think that juries shouldn't be looking for a trend. They should try to, as much as possible, stay away from them, because the responsibility that we have of learning on behalf of the industry is the ability to spot the work that is so good that may spark a trend, but not because it may spark a trend. I think that the trend in a creativity and innovation based business like ours, trends should be the enemy. Because trend is like is repetition with glamour. We're trying to avoid it, not follow it. So if what happens if you can spot a trend in the beginning, that is probably going to start to knock things down. Right? And if you start to see in the end something that really stands out, what happens is that people are going to see the result in the pencil from D&AD are a great example of this. Like, oh, those are the things that we should be doing more of. And then they start to copy, which means that next year the jury is going to take you down because you just copied something. Even if their intentions were great, it's still you're still doing something that is following something else, and the best things start to pop when they're not. Of course, it happens that sometimes people have similar ideas. They're absolutely original in 2 parts of the world at the same time, because they're trying to be against everything else, and their againstness puts them in the same place. And I think that there is a good example that we saw in our jury, that Bronco and the Spumante horse mockumentary. There are 2 mockumentaries that were very funny. They were very interesting, that they both suffered from being next to the other.
Right.
That they have a very similar tone, a very similar photography, very similar structure. And if there was only one, that one would have done better. Because there were 2, the jury was a little split. Like, yeah, which one should be better? Is that one or that one? And half went one way, the other half went the other way. And then they didn't agree, and they're both kind of left a little bit lower than maybe they should have if they were the only ones.
You talk about splitting the jury there. That segues quite nicely into what I was hoping for, like the nitty gritty. What were the biggest arguments in the room? What were the moments where there was a bit of loggerheads between people?
I don't think there was any like real big discussion. The jury was very respectful of each other, kind of each other's perspective. And what I saw a lot of people changing their minds, which is great. The Apple thing, for example, the museum, there was very little love for that. But there was one judge that raised her hand, like, I think this is really great, because to the point that someone was making, it's like, no one is going to watch 5 hours of that. So it's boring. I tried to watch, it was boring. And someone said, yeah, but you watch the pieces that you like better, and it was just like going to a museum. And now you know that the phone, the battery lasts for 5 hours, right? Right. Yeah. And then everything, eventually they started, they won a pencil, but it wasn't even on the short, it wasn't on the wood pencil list, but it
Oh,
got brought back because of the debate. And I think that is something, that is a sign of a good jury, is that when you're listening to each other and actually allowing ourselves in the case, to have our minds changed. Because I think there are only two ways of running a jury, and I was trying to do it what I think is right, to kind of put everyone the way this, that is like, either you go for the minimum common denominator, that is, let's pick things that everyone likes and no one hates. But that means that, we're picking things that don't really get anyone angry, but maybe don't get anyone to love either. I feel like, what I asked them to do, please consider the other judges' love. So even if you hate something and you see that someone else that you respect loves it, give it some credit, because like, maybe that's a sign of boldness. And the kind of thing that you wish you could be doing, and when your client reacts, if like, I personally hate it, but I think we should do it anyway. So that's a situation that is a very honest and real situation that we face every day. So let's be open for that. Let's be open for love despite the hate, not the okayness of work that is okay enough to be okay, kind of have a thumbs up from everyone else. And I think that they did a pretty good job on that. If they saw something that felt like, I do not like it, but I understand why this should win, these things won. There were lots of things as well, like, I understand what you're saying, but I don't love it. I think this is okay I'm okay. I hear you. I'm okay to put it on a wood level, but I don't think it's a graphite. And everyone's like, okay, it's fine. It's fair enough. It's a very personal judgment, and that's all we're there is to actually share our gut reaction to things. As long as we were doing that based on our personal reactions, not our definitions, I was fine with that. The definitions is what screws this whole process over. I remember being a jury on kind of the digital category years ago, and we were, in the end, kind of had to pick the biggest winner, and we were split. The jury was split between two things. One was a very interactive idea. The other one was just a series of films. And the jury felt like, the definition of interactive is that you need to have interactivity. So that should be that. And the other half of the jury felt like, no, but I agree that, but we still love that other one better. Maybe the definition is wrong. And we discussed for 3 hours. We couldn't get to debate. And we finally decided that let's see if there's one that is majority, like 50% plus one, we're going to go for that. Fine. We picked the interactive one. And that meant that we were making the decision that interactivity defines what interactive is, and film didn't belong, and interactive belonged in the film category. Maybe they should give it a prize. And 6 months later, YouTube was born. A few years later, Netflix was born. And we missed, because we were too stuck to our definitions of what interactive used to be. We missed the opportunity of seeing first that on-demand video is the quintessential function of interactive.
Right.
What it was going to become. So we missed the opportunity of learning on behalf of the industry because we're too stuck on our own definition. So I think that same thing is valid for brand entertainment. We cannot stick our heads into our asses and so like, this is what it is. I'm the jury. The jury member this year, I'm the jury president this year, and this world is what brand. It's like, no. Who's going to determine what it is the audience, and it's the brands who are putting their money. Are the engineers that are creating new ways of getting people to avoid advertising, and we still need to find a way to exist. Our response to the big insistence that the world has right now to kill our jobs.
Well, yeah, you talk about just going back to the sort of discussions in the jury's room, as it were. You talk about the people arguing and sort of putting forward their point of view. Oh, this one I thought was good for this reason. Were there any films or any pieces that you saw where absolutely everyone was like, yeah, I mean, that one definitely should go through?
I'll say that IKEA was since the beginning like that. That's clearly. I'll say that Bronco and Spumante were kind of a funny thing because they were half of the room for like, yeah, that's definitely, and the other half like, no, I don't, it doesn't speak to me. So it's like part of us like, that's a clear yes, and part of us, no, that's a clear no. So they went to graphite and wood. So kind of it's a big accomplishment.
Well, speaking of the room, as we keep on saying, how was the judging process this time around? Because you did it virtually, I guess. Was it through like a Zoom video conferencing thing?
It was just like this, and I have to say that I thought it was going to be like underwhelming, but it was as thrilling and enriching as any other judging experience that I've had. I mean, it was very respectful, very well organized, and we had a chance to see, we had a chance to talk, we had a chance to discuss. It was different from others in a sense that it's not a continuum. You don't get locked for days straight in a room because it's way more complicated. But so we would take like mornings, like or like for 4 hour sessions of 4 hours, or mornings for me, late nights for others, and afternoons for others, and we got in for like 4 hours and then and then 2 days later we went back and continued kind of with the next day. And I think actually there's some advantages of that because you're not as exhausted. It's not as grinding as being stuck in a room, in a dark room, the whole time can be. So I appreciate that. I feel like I was fresher. The discussions we were all much fresher and more relaxed during the discussions than.
Did you view everything sort of together like through the conference, or were you watching things beforehand and then discussing them for the?
We watch everything before and then we discuss. But as we were discussing, often we brought it back, especially in cases where someone in the room hadn't watched the whole thing, because one of the tricks of judging brand entertainment for me as well is that you got to watch the real thing, not the case study, right? That is like just judging an idea based on the case study is like judging the Oscars based on the trailers. And the best actor is that person because of the 30 seconds on the trailer. No, it doesn't matter. That's not how you do it. But you can, when you're judging, you can't feel like, yeah, I watched a case study and I feel like I do not like the premise. I don't see value in that. I wouldn't watch this, so I don't want to watch the film. So that's fine. But giving an award to something that we haven't seen, I wouldn't have allowed them to do it. So the further we went in the process, the more we took the time to watch the whole thing. So, and there were cases that were like, I don't like the premise, so I didn't watch it. And someone felt like, no, but it's brilliant. I was intrigued and I watched it and it was much better than I thought. And you should watch it, which happens in regular entertainment as well, right? Like, I don't like the premise of these series on Netflix. And someone was, but it's amazing. You watch it. It's great. And you watch it like, oh my God, it's so good. Yeah. And that's part of the dynamic. And I think it's a valid process. The trailer and the premise will drag you in or not, and then your friends will drag you in or not. But ultimately, in order to say that something is great, you have to have watched it.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that: is it worth the time that people are spending? I think that there is because we as an industry have so obsessed and or so stuck into this limit of 30 seconds. That when you can break away from them, we tend to overdo. Right? Like, okay, we can do 10 minutes, so let's do 10 minutes. And then becomes a boring 10 minutes when it should have been 3. Or it should have been 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? that is when things go south. Is that when you try to go too long, because then it's not worth the time. If you don't have any guides on how much time it should be, don't follow any guide of what time should be.
Yeah.
It's okay with being super short or super long. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I produced a movie with Werner Herzog. Fine, great. It's like 2 hour long. It's a Herzog. Yeah, let him speak. It's fine.
That's the point of a Werner Herzog movie. You just want to hear that voice.
You don't shorten the guy. It's fine. But if you don't have it, if your content is great for 2 minutes, enjoy the 2 minutes. Don't go on the third minute and make it longer and boring just because you can. Just because you can is usually the poison that destroys it. It needs to be worth the time.
Right.
And that is a wiser and more critical decision than it seems. It's not as good or not for the time. It's like, no, the decision of how long this should be, so it's still worth the time you're spending, is a critical one. If it's one of the best pieces of entertainment that the world has ever seen, it's worth having 3 hours of it. Great. But if it's not, it's okay to be 10 minutes.
So, well, speaking of not having to sort of fill a length of time or anything like that, the D&AD is pretty unique in that there's not a sort of defined number of black pencils that need to be handed out, not a defined number of yellow pencils or anything like that. So once you, as a jury, have made that decision of like, yeah, here is the work that we think is great, how are those distinctions made then? What pushes something to a black pencil? What sort of makes it, how do you define it within?
The process is pretty well structured in the sense that, you see everything, and then you pick the ones that stand out. They make the short list. You can do that some stand out. And then it's like a filtering process, right? So right. Filter, you make a long list, you filter again, make a short list. All right, which one of those? And there are all sorts of definitions. They put slides for us, and it's like, but the reality is that we look at a block of work. If like some stand out, let them go to the next level. Some stand out, then let them go to the next level. Some stand out, let them go to the next level. And that goes from entries to a long list, to the short list, to the woods, to the silver, to the graphites, to the yellows. And then some of those yellow become recommendations to the black, and some of the black get picked as black. The conversation most of the times are like, yeah, I think this is great for the level behind, but it's not enough to stand out to the next level.
Well,
and then you move back, or you hold it back, or move forward.
What personally for you, what makes D&AD as a awards body, as a competition important? What makes it sort of stand out?
It is clearly the most difficult of all awards. So winning a yellow is really, really hard. Winning a pencil is really hard. So it's not the responsibility of picking something that is held to such a high standard is very critical, and is a responsibility of the juries. I think that all the juries that have been in D&AD kind of take very seriously as well. So this is a freaking D&AD pencil. This is not worth going, or we should. It's okay to stop here. It shouldn't go forward, because it says that, going to the next round, it says a lot about, this is something that the world should look at as a reference of what greatness is.
Just because of like the position that you were in viewing it under these conditions, did that affect how you viewed any of the thick pieces?
Yeah, I think it affects in some ways, in a positive way, some ways in a negative ways, and we try to minimize the negative. I think the positive way, the negative way. So the negative impact that may have is when you look at something that does not make sense in the world that we're living now, and we cringe, like seeing people hugging, people shaking hands, no, don't do it. It's like it's hard not to have those visceral reactions, and we have to remind ourselves that these are the things that we're looking at are work that have been produced 1 year and a half, almost 2 years ago sometimes, and we need to take that under consideration. The world was not like it is today. Given that we can take allow ourselves to respect that, to remember that is the bad side. There's a good side of that, is that, it's what's happening in the world is pushing us to take a few things more seriously, like racial bias, like racism, right? And things um, that have a more inclusive perspective, either on the production or in the idea, tend to rise, and it's great. And that's a good thing. And I think that we are, as human beings, being impacted more than judges. And again, our visceral reaction is a reflection of what's happening around us, which is a fair way of judging, because regular people have visceral reactions based on what's happening around them. Right? And it's less rational and more visceral, more emotional. That's great. That's a right way of judging, I think, in my opinion. And I think that we got a little bit of that, and thankfully, I think it worked.
I always like to end these chats on a deep and meaningful note. So, but thank you so much for your time, PJ, for chatting through all this stuff today. Anyone watching this, if you haven't seen all of the films, all of the content that made it through, there's some wonderful distractions from the fact that you're locked up. In my case, locked up with a toddler, but in many cases, locked up with people who are even more crazy. So, go and enjoy those. But yeah, thank you so much, PJ. That was fantastic.
It was my pleasure. It was awesome to judge, awesome to have this conversation. I hope that people look at the winners and get inspired to do more of that.